Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Close Encounters of the Cyber Kind, here on Halloween, as I'm going to be in my rock star outfit today. Greetings, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Rock on. Let's go. Happy Halloween. And we will let everyone get joining in here momentarily before we get started. I'll try and keep the band, from rocking and rolling too loud here in the background. Meanwhile, we'll have our exciting webinar today and get into it. Again, welcome, folks, to the Managed Methods monthly webinar series. We've got Close Encounters of the Cyber Kind, and right now, all of you are having a close encounter with a aging rock star. I'll go ahead and lose the glasses here, and I might even lose the wig to scare everybody. Hey, my name is David Waugh. Thanks for joining us here for our Managed Methods webinar. Happy Halloween to everyone. So good morning, good afternoon, and we're going to share some spooky tales. And of course, I've probably already scared everybody with this crazy wig and get up. Of course, I see some friends already in the audience who already know me, and they know that this is truly not the look of my hair. So we'll get underway. So let's let folks join in here. Still got folks trickling in the door, but yes, let's go rock it. I got my rock star theme today. This will be the costume that I'll be out there scaring kids as they come up to the door to get candy tonight. So, good day, welcome. Close Encounters of the Cyber Kind, a cautionary tale for K12 tech leaders. I've got a couple good friends joining us today. I'll be introducing momentarily, who are going to share some spooky cybersecurity type stories as we roll into this. And of course, then I'm also, in my costume, ready to roll as the rock star for Managed Methods. So a couple housekeeping items I want to remind everyone here. The webinar is being recorded, of course, as always. So you will receive a link to the recording as well as a copy of the presentation within usually about 24 hours, give or take. Zoom might process that faster, might process a little bit slower. Any questions that you may have for either myself or the panelists, you will submit them into the QA or the chat panel because all attendees are muted. So we appreciate everyone joining today. So if you have questions, comments, you want to know how you can get hair like this and be a part of the band, or you're going to have, more importantly, questions to share with the panelists or the rest of the folks, we like this to be interactive. So put those into the chat panel. So why is it that we're here today, besides having a little fun and celebrating some Halloween, but to talk about cybersecurity and do some sharing and have you folks all participate in this. So we'll get into this and go through some things, kind of to recap people. First and foremost, who we are and what we do here at Managed Methods. We are about helping school districts protect their data, protect the individuals, everything from cybersecurity to data protection, data loss prevention, student safety, classroom management, filtering, all the above. Managed Methods, purpose-built K12, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into it. But, what is it that always brings us back to the table, brings us all together? Well, you see these things in the media all the time, and we've almost all become numb to them because constantly there is cyber incidents happening all over the place, whether it's in commercial businesses, whether it's in K12, it's always there. And I would be willing to bet that probably a vast majority of you that are here on this webinar today, you are either aware of a cyber incident that has occurred within a school district, or you have experienced one within your school itself. They are constantly there. They're out there front and center all the time, and we have to be constantly vigilant about it. Couple things as a public service announcement, some recent things to watch out for that we have been seeing within our customer base within the last few weeks, and we've put them out into our blog and customer newsletter. There's two recent scams, phishing, vishing, as they're being called, that are out there, both impacting Google and Microsoft. So there's a Gmail account takeover scam that's been publicized, where you will receive a what looks to be a support ticket that comes from Google, indicating that they've noticed a compromised situation with your account or unusual behavior activity, followed by an AI-powered phone call that seems so real that it's coming from a Google support engineer. Google's not going to call you unless you're one of their, top-tier corporate business entities it's not a common scenario that Google has acknowledged that they do. So that's one to be on the lookout for. Of course, then there's been threat actors misusing the quick assist aspects within Microsoft. So if you want to learn more about these, we've put them into our customer blog as well as our customer newsletter. But be sure to go out and look into these. These are things that just have really come up within the last few weeks, and we've seen them going crazy. Of course, we're celebrating an anniversary of sorts. It's been just a little over a year ago that a new breed of attacks hit the education market with the Singularity MD attacks that happened against various schools, most notably one of the largest schools in the nation, Clark County School System in Las Vegas, Nevada. Right here in my home state of Colorado, Jeffco Public Schools, where I live and work and my children go to school, was impacted by the same incident that happened to Clark County and many, many others. So, it just kind of was something I realized as we were putting this webinar together that, wow, we just had the 1 year anniversary of one of the biggest cyber attacks. And it was a new breed of cyber attack. And, that's what we're going to talk about today. There are so many different types of cyber attacks and areas of, threat landscape, if you would, that you as professionals in technology have to protect against. And so that's what we're going to get into and discuss today. So, what I'll do here, and if any of you want information, by the way, about any of these types of cyber incidents, feel free to put it in the chat. We can get an email to you or email sales@managemethods.com, and we can talk about them and ways we can help protect you. Now, I'm going to scare everybody. There we go. There's the real. Everybody knows what my hair really looks like. So thanks for being a part of today's webinar. And we appreciate, first and foremost, my two friends here, Fran and Sal, joining us. They're going to be helping share some spooky tales and scary tales. And then we, of course, encourage all of you in the audience to, put in the chat, share some of the, incidents and things and occurrences you've run into recently with cyber incidents. So to kind of jump into the round table, if you would, I'd like to introduce my two guests, two friends here, Mr. Fran Watkins and Salvador. Why don't you guys, I'll just let you guys introduce yourself and we'll go from there. Fran, how about you go first?
Yeah, I'm Fran Watkins. I work at Centennial School District. It's in Warminster, PA. It's about 25 miles north of Philadelphia. We have 5,300 students. We have like 43 different countries and 39 different languages in our district.
That alone is a challenge.
Yeah.
Sal?
Hi, everybody. I'm actually with Buckeye Elementary School District. We're Buckeye. It's in the West Valley it's in the metropolitan area of Phoenix. Currently, we have 6,270 students. We're growing. Buckeye was actually the fastest growing city in the U.S. at a point. I mean, everything in development and everything's growing. So we're expecting more students and maybe probably a new school. We have 8 schools and we're opening up a new school pretty soon.
Yes, fast growth for sure down there in the Phoenix area. And both of you, thank you for joining us. We like to have this nice representation across the country. What did we determine yesterday, Sal? You could hop on a plane and be up there to visit Fran on a direct flight in 4.5 hours? Or Fran, I think, what was it? If you drove 2,400 some odd miles, it would only take you about 25 hours if you left now to get out there to visit Sal. So, well, good. Thank you so much. Representation with, of course, Pennsylvania, Arizona, but we also have representation from all around the country as I look at some of the names here in our webinar. And feel free, folks, throw out there into the chat where you're from. It's fun to have everybody together today here on Halloween. And again, it's not fun to talk about spooky stories by no means, especially when they impact our school districts and our staff and our kiddos. And it's scary, if anything. But the reality is it's out there and it happens. And what we want to make sure is we bring to light here is that it is there. And let's gather around and have these conversations and share stories. Of course, we here at Managed Methods focus on helping schools like Centennial, like Buckeye, protect their data. And therefore, we ask these two to join us today to share some stories and not just about sharing a story about maybe something of recent, but any type of cyber incidents or student safety scary situations that may have occurred. So we'll start out with just a few questions, and then we'll get into it here. So we talked offline, Fran, Sal, before we got going about these challenges that are out there. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you see today with K12 districts that are facing with maintaining a proper cybersecurity posture? So what kind of challenges have you faced in that? So Fran, I'll have you go first.
I think one of the biggest challenges is resources. We're always undermanned and getting cybersecurity talent. That's one of the reasons why I outsource most of mine, because I don't have the talent within the district. So I went to third parties to fill that gap.
Sal, what are some of the challenges you're dealing with in that realm?
Like Fran said, resources, talented people, trying to find people that actually have the cybersecurity, network administration, system administration, the talent and the skills, the experience. Usually most of the time, I mean, myself, I'm jack of all trades. I mean, I do cybersecurity and networking as well, but I need people that actually could, be there monitoring the network or system administration without asking for help, and it's the third parties that I usually go to as well. Like managed methods, I use the resource of monitoring emails and suspending accounts automatically. So I usually go to third parties as well.
Resources, I think that is a common theme, and obviously I think it would probably impact anyone on this call today. Resources, not only the people, but awareness. Sometimes that resources in the terms of financial, because if you don't have the budget, can't always hire it, can't always necessarily outsource it either. How today, and I'll stay with you, Sal, and then we'll come back to you, Fran. So how do you stay updated on emerging threats and keep your cybersecurity posture, your strategies current? Case in point, like we talked about, offline before we got started, and I just mentioned here in this webinar, 2 brand new types of phishing, or vishing as they're calling them, because they're now incorporating not just email, but even live contact in some regards over the phone. So how do you stay updated on emerging threats?
I try to keep up to date online. There's different organizations that keep me updated: Security Weekly, CompTIA, Google News. I also talk to my colleagues around. I'm part of a membership here in Arizona. It's like a coalition cybersecurity task force in Arizona, and we talk. I mean, we talk with people that are from different organizations, and they let us know, hey, this is occurring. But I mean, most of the time we try to keep it confidential between each other because it's part of a coalition, and we share that information within each other. Just knowing that you have a network of people and talking to them, and also keeping up with the news, going onto different websites that provide different updates. I usually go, like I said, I have a variety of websites that I go to, and I keep updated. But as well, I mean, I'm part of an adjunct. I also teach as a professor, so I keep myself updated there as well with my colleagues. So I just try to, it's more likely like networking with people that share that information. They send you an email and they say, hey, keep an eye on this phishing attack, AI, they're impersonating your voice. And I try to, my disclaimer put, if you're questioning the phone call, please, contact IT or email us.
Yeah, absolutely right. Don't give out information to anyone unless you can validate, it's Sal or Fran or your IT department or whoever you're dealing with. And note that, on those 2 examples, it's extremely rare that Google or Microsoft Corporation is going to contact individuals over the phone and say, hey, we need to talk about this. So, and it's even in our own personal lives. I'm constantly reminding my family members, my 85-year-old mother, she's active on her computer and out there all the time. And I constantly remind her, like, Mom, if an email comes in that I haven't talked to you about, or you get a phone call from somebody, don't give out any information. And she has fallen prey to those types of things in the past. So, but back to the school realm. Fran, in your realm, how are you, like Sal talked about, how are you staying up to date on the latest things that are happening in the cybersecurity front?
I'm a part of an organization, CISCA, the government agency. I get a lot of feeds from them about what's going on. Also, we have a monthly meeting with all the directors in the county. We talk about cybersecurity that way, and we're always in contact. Like if something's going on with one of the other districts, they'll let us know, and then we'll be on the lookout for what's going on. Webinars, always jumping on webinars to find out what's the latest and greatest, especially in different third-party applications, like we're doing now. So that's kind of where I keep. Obviously, the news is always give us horror stories about what's going on. In fact, I recently heard of a district from one of my colleagues that it's probably about 15-20 minutes from here, that all of a sudden the network is offline. They didn't explain why, but so obviously we know what's going on internally. But yeah, that's how I do it.
So the birds of a feather, it takes a village, as we always say, and I mean, case in point, this great village right now. When you look at the audience here, the education community, I think, more so than maybe other industries, is really good about information sharing and staying on top of things. And you mentioned, both of you, various not only regional resources, whether it be tech director groups within your region or state groups, but then also there's lots of good national resources, whether it be from CISA, ISAC, COSIN, you name it. So lots of good resources out there. And I'll put that out there, of course, to the audience. Feel free to throw in the chat. What are some of the ways you stay up to speed and current on the latest cybersecurity threats, beyond some of the things maybe that Fran and Sal have mentioned? Is it a state chapter, like my friends I know that are here from Texas, the TETL, the Texas Education Technology Leaders, the COSIN chapter there is extremely active in networking. And I just came back from a conference in Missouri, called METAL, the Missouri Education Technology Leaders. So, share with each other. And, part of the nice thing about these national webinars we do, sometimes we've seen, resources that are shared that, are in other states, but they provide good templates or good information, and you don't have to be a part of that state. So thank you for sharing that. So Fran, since you're here, I'll stay with you. We talked about, one of the other topics was how schools, districts assess their current cybersecurity defenses, and that kind of goes in line with some of these other things. How do you stay current on stuff? But maybe an example within Centennial, or of other schools, or what recommendations that you have, or what you've gone through to assess your current cybersecurity defense posture. Have you gone through that recently?
Yeah, what I do is a self-assessment. Actually, I have a mentor in ISAC that we're actually working through the assessment. I'm doing my own assessment, but then we're going to get together and he's going to kind of validate it, just to see where we're at. I did one. I try to do one once a year just to keep up with what's going on, because things always change. Personnel's changing, just to keep what we're doing up to speed. I'm in the process right now of doing that. It should take a couple weeks before I'm finished, and then I'll get my results, and that's where I'm working on right now.
Okay, good. So working through a program with ISAC to have someone else kind of check over your work and help validate it.
Yeah, they have a mentor program. So he's actually in Oregon.
Oh, okay. So well, we got some Oregon people on this call today. Sal, I know you also are, a teaching professional besides being a technology leader. So, what are some of the ways that you look at how districts can assess their cybersecurity defenses?
Well, usually there's different organizations like Homeland Security. There's police organizations right here in Phoenix that could assess the physical and the logical security as well. I have our cybersecurity insurance. They also help with vulnerability scanning, internal and public. there's third party as well, but we usually try to do one, every month vulnerability scans with our cybersecurity insurance. They scan our network and they tell us, I mean, we have pages and pages of vulnerabilities, but they tell us the top 10, and I keep updated what the top 10 are, and they tell us, okay, work on these 10 and try to break it down. I mean, yeah, we have our firewall and you know, it's protecting us here and there, but it's to a certain extent. You have so many software applications that we have to monitor and update. So with that, the vulnerability, I mean, scan, I mean, for internal and public facing, we just, you know, keep at it. It's just progressing little by little, you know, trying to protect the network, because it's not a matter of if, it's when they're going to actually attack.
Yeah, and that last statement there is one that we hear echoed all the time by cybersecurity experts. It's not if, it's when, and you need to be prepared that it's going to happen. And so it's not only about preemptive, and hence when the question, you know, how to assess current cybersecurity defenses, but then what is not only the upfront defense mechanisms, what are the plans for it, but then what is the, you know, plan for after it happens, you know. And so those are things that certainly come into play. And I know we talked about that on a previous webinar here at Managed Methods. Actually, just the last one we did was talking about some of the, you know, post event incident situations that schools have to go through and how they react to those. So thank you. And thank you to one of our audience members that put out a nice post there. It says, subscribing to the SANS at-risk and hacker news email newsletters too. So yes, lots of different great resources out there to get information from. And, you know, there should not ever be an excuse that, well, I didn't have a resource out there. There's plenty of resources to go look for information. Well, let's kind of shift mode a little bit and get into kind of the theme of today's, you know, telling some stories. So I started out with a little recap of a story front, if you would, in terms of, you know, unfortunately, it's the 1-year anniversary, and I'll back up, of some of these big cyber attacks. So, you know, the first story I'll kind of start with here is, again, because it is near and dear to me, it hit home right to my home school district, and that was the Singularity MD attacks that happened this time last year when they first surfaced, and they are still actually happening today, I'm sure, in various places. But the ones that, of course, hit home to me were right here in my backyard at Jeffco Public Schools, where my wife was an elementary education professional. My son was a senior in high school. My daughter was in 7th grade. And yes, we did receive notifications after the fact in 3 separate envelopes, you know, that their data was compromised as a part of that. And these types of, you know, new threat actors that continually are surfacing every day, this particular group, you know, compromised student accounts within Google and Google Drive, Google Groups, and found various ways. Jeffco was very similar to the attack they did on Clark County, and then similar to the attack they did on Long Beach, and then other schools that may not have been publicized. And the scary part with each one of these types of situations that occurred with this hacking group and this cyber incident was that the districts did not know it had happened until the cyber group took it public. And even after they took it public, in several of these documented incidences, the hacking groups came out and said, hey, we still have access to this, and they proved it, and they gave proof to local media outlets. And not good. Scary stuff. And, you know, I know these various school districts, you know, have been still, you know, working to address these situations. But like any cyber incident, you know, once it occurs, there's always going to be a lingering effect, and it's how we can learn from it, share incidents. And to the point of these 2 situations in this scary story with the Singularity MD attacks was make sure that you look at all of your account users, not just staff. Look at staff and students. Look at how file sharing access is allowed, how group access is allowed, and then look at your password policies. Because in the case of Clark County, Nevada, the hackers pointed out, we got in because the student's date of birth was the password format. And so it wasn't really hard for them to run some number generators to kind of figure it out until they got a hit on date of birth and then student information. So lots of landscapes and different fronts to look at. So story sharing. Sal, I know that you've got a story you wanted to share, so we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, I became director about a year ago. So I took the position. I was previously a director at a high school, but I moved out. I was actually here near Goodyear and Buckeye, and I applied as a network admin over here at Buckeye Elementary, and I transitioned into director last year. So I was working on improving, the school network, the infrastructure, looking at different solutions for security. And one thing is that it takes time. It's not like something that you could just jump in and say, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to improve the MFA. I'm going to add these software. You get a lot of pushback from especially the top team executives. They want you to do it slowly and integrated. But at that time, I was looking into MFA, and we were planning to implement it probably in March of last year. But we just, they decided, no, you can't do it. Let's try to do it in the summertime. And I was like, okay. So I'm taking it step by step. And at that time around, I would say July, August, we had, there's a lot of things that I'm being introduced to. I'm learning about the servers, the different web applications, what we had in the network. And being introduced as a director of IT, you see thousands and thousands of settings and applications, and you have to document everything. We didn't have that much documentation on the servers and the different web applications, what they do. So I had to actually document everything just to make sure that we had some kind of documentation. Usually I try to keep that offline or on physical. And then at the time, in the summertime of last year, we were planning MFA. And at that point, there was maybe a phishing email. And I think one of my colleagues, actually entered this information. And at that time we had VPN, and I was planning MFA on the servers, computers, and our email service as well. And I implemented it probably towards July, August. And then at that time, Google was set, the servers, I was getting ready for MFA, and the computers as well. And one time I was on the computer and I was remoting into our one of the domain controllers, probably in August. And at that time, just somebody, I think they got their phishing email and they used the VPN, and I think they were exploring our network. And I didn't know about it because they were using somebody else's user account. And I was skimming through different servers, and I thought I saw the mouse move, and I was like, did I see the mouse move, or it was just me? Somebody was logged into a admin account, and I was like, maybe it was me. And I was kind of thinking to myself in August, well, let's go ahead and try to push an MFA out on the servers, probably towards mid-August or September, have it all set. And at that time, some person was actually into our network, and this person was the threat actor was doing some kind of gathering information. He was trying to gather information what we had, and at that point I was on and off, so they were noticing that we were on and off on the network. And I think a month later, come to September, I still remember the day I was waking up. I was like, okay, it's a good day. Everything's fine. Let's go get some coffee at the store. And then I get a call from the IT coordinator, and he's like, hey, Sal, we have a problem here. And I was like, what's the problem? And he's like, well, we have ransomware in our file server. And I was like, gotta be kidding me. I had my blood shot down, and I was like, okay, I gotta get over there right away. I didn't get my coffee, or I was having a good day. It's like everything's going to be fine. So, but just notice at that time, I already implemented MFA on most of the servers. But what they did is I think they were able to access one of the servers and run their commands. I didn't implement it on all the servers because we weren't ready. I think it was our camera servers. So we weren't ready to implement MFA, but they were able to get into that server and push out their commands and scripts. And they did ransomware on all our servers. And at that time, the servers were still working. But I think when I came back, I looked at the logs. I looked at every log on the VPN, on the servers, who it was. And I found out who it was. And then I found out how they got in. And the oddest thing is that they were on the network for 2 hours, but it looks like they kicked themselves out because they didn't know that we had virtual machines. I think they were trying to destroy our data backups and everything. I mean, we had backups, and we have backups within our virtuals as well. And as we had those backups, they didn't notice that one of the virtuals was actually the one that ran the VPN, and they ran a script or something. They kicked themselves off the network, and they didn't do as much damage to our servers, and everything was still operational. And I was able to disable the account and make sure that I disable the VPN and check all the, I was checking on the firewall, making sure everything was okay. And at that point, they already infiltrated, they already did their damage, but I was able to pinpoint where they were coming from, and I was able to shut it down. But then at the same time, I was like, I'm lucky that they actually kicked themselves out. And at that point, I had to call my cybersecurity insurance, and they told me, leave everything as it is, and then we'll come in. And I told them, well, I disabled the VPN because I know where they came from. And as I disabled the VPN, they came in, they monitor everything, they checked everything, they looked into our servers. It took a couple months, I would say September, October. Everything was coming back to normal, like late October. I was able to grab the backups, get everything up and going, rebuilt everything. I actually was able to do everything without asking for a third-party vendor. It was going to cost us quite a bit, I mean, for them to come in and replace everything. And they were, in the end, it wasn't a data breach because I implemented MFA before they were able to get into the servers. They noticed MFA, and I think they said, oh, now we can't get the data. While they were doing the reconnaissance, they were just trying to figure out our network, figure out where everything was at. But at that time, I implemented MFA on our Google, implemented it on our servers, and I kind of think they got surprised, and they didn't get any data. So they did the cybersecurity team was a team of 15. And just to share that the group that was in our network, I'm just going to share, it was the Kira group, the Russian group. And, the cybersecurity team, they told me, kind of seems like the Kira member was kind of amateur, but I'm kind of thinking they were getting ready, and they kind of went to our virtuals and kicked themselves off. And we actually, at that point, I mean, they would have done more damage, got probably our computers, local users, gone into a different VLAN, but specifically our servers were in a specific VLAN, so they were able to access all our servers. But I mean, they kind of damaged all our servers. They put a Kira ransomware. They did send out an email to a couple users, but the thing is that we were keeping an eye on it, and nothing came out after 5 months up to a year. There was a dark web website that Kira puts their information, whoever they got ransomware, and we didn't get posted or anything. So more likely, I was calling it a bluff, and I was like, I'm not going to give in to these people, and I'm not going to give them anything. I'm not going to communicate with them. I don't think so. They did anything because they were just in our network within 2-3 hours trying to do the damage right away. But they didn't. I mean, they didn't succeed in bringing our network down. They didn't succeed in getting the data. But then afterwards, I had to do a lot of cleanup. There was the firewall. I had to take a look. The VPN, I shut it down completely. I had to check password resets on everything, on all the accounts. We had to do kind of like rebuilding of our domain, making sure the cybersecurity team was able to monitor everything, and they looked at everything within the 3 months or I think 3 to 5 months that they were in our network. They didn't find anything afterwards. After I shut that down, that opening access for that threat actor to come into our network, it just completely, completely shut down the outside world to the inside. So it's important to look at the firewall, especially if you have outside inside rules, and just specifically aim it to the server and make sure it's not open to anybody. So that's one thing that I've learned, that there was, I would say, hundreds of rules in our access control list for that firewall. And I went through each of them. I mean, I was working up to six days a week with the network admin, and we were trying to figure out everything. We actually organized our documentation. I mean, we organized everything, what we knew, what we didn't know, and we had a sort of like a contingency plan, just in case situations like this happen. I actually had a shutdown switch, a command button I was going to use, but I called the cybersecurity experts, and the team. They told me, don't do anything. I was going to shut down the whole network just to be sure that I'm safe. But I actually figured out where they came from right away just by looking at logs. And I've learned a lot. I mean, I've learned to make sure that firewall, make sure I keep everything updated, make sure I know everything about the network. There's things that I didn't even know of. Some vendors kind of in the previous director kind of had that open access still with kind of vendors. And it's always important to keep up to date, making sure you disable accounts so they don't have access within your network. Or I did notice some software that I was like, wait a sec, what is this software? And it was based on the previous director. And, I was here just to improve their network security wise. And I mean, in the end, I've learned a lot about the network, and I feel like we're more secure now. I mean, we have endpoints, we have different group policies, we have closed ports, making sure we have vulnerability testing, and usually we have third party as well. I mean, I have some policies that if anybody logs in RDP or anything on my servers, I get an SMS text message right away or email. So I have a SMTP relay on all the servers, and I've learned a lot. It makes me more precautious, but I was kind of introduced into this new school network, and being introduced to a new school network, it always comes with challenges, understanding it, and then trying to implement different security, but in the same time, you're getting pushback. And then after this, I think I didn't get pushback right away.
I would say after this, you probably didn't get any pushback.
No, so they're like.
So if I'm hearing some of your, if I hear in a theme here, number one is you have to know what's in your environment, network topography, what software applications, vendors, pretty much anything or anyone that has access to your environment. Know where all the back doors, front doors, side doors, everything is, your network environment, as you talked about. And then, these types of stories, like MFA, there's a key one right there that you talked about that kind of helped harden the things. Sal, one of the things that the audience may be curious about, I know I am, as you've talked through this, you've mentioned a cybersecurity team or so. Was that from your cyber insurance company, or where did that come from that you brought in?
That was part of the cybersecurity insurance company that they brought in. They're a good group. They're widely known in the nation about. I mean, they actually followed up with me, and they were very good. And
you're welcome to share the name of the company if you'd like. I mean, it's
their name is Packet Watch.
Packet Watch.
Yeah, based on Scottsdale, Arizona.
Okay.
They're very good.
And this was a year ago, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, September.
So Fran, you're sitting here and your eyes a couple times, they're like, whoa, wait a minute. So Fran, have you had a scary story such as that? That one was pretty.
No, I haven't had anything. I haven't anything that scary. My biggest one was, well, recently, the closest one was, I guess a couple weeks ago, I got a call from my SOC. They're monitoring my network all the time, and they gave me a call that there's someone on your network they thought that was in one of my accounts that wasn't used. So they called me up. I told them to quarantine everything. They quarantined the server. It was used for heating and cooling, so it wasn't affecting too much. Next day, I come in and look at a lot of the logs. We looked at all the logs. We didn't see anything that was going lateral. It was just basically internal to that server. So what we did after that is saw that it was actually affecting my backup software. What it was actually doing is that at the end of the script of the backup software, it did a report, and that was one of my accounts that it pulled up. So it was an easy fix. I just had to get rid of the profile of that account. No harm, no foul on the server, put the server back online, and we were fine. One of the biggest things that was beneficial to me was the SOC called me up and let me know that there was suspicious activity within my network, and I could just quarantine it within minutes. And then next day, I didn't have to worry about it. Next day, I could go in and resolve the issue, which luckily for me, it was a false positive. I didn't have to really deal with much of that. The other incident that I get a lot of is with students logging in from other countries. Managed Methods lets me know that, oh, this the last one was a student logging in from Russia, and it was actually so what I did is I looked to find out what the account was, and actually this account was legitimate, because they had relatives over in Russia, so that was okay. But you get red flags when you get a lot of outside countries students logging in, so you have to be cautious about that. You're on mute, Dave.
That's probably a good thing that I was muted, right? And you had mentioned both earlier in your introduction and offline when we've been preparing for today's event that you have a very internationally diverse audience within your school district outside of the Philadelphia area there. And you do, when you shared that story, it was like, here Sal just shared a story of the Akira Russian hacking group. And then you're like, whoa, we got somebody trying to log in and be in Russia. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, it's a legitimate student who's visiting family. So you have to be ever vigilant and look into these things and monitor and keep track of it. So I'm glad that we alerted you to a login coming from outside the country. I'm actually glad it was a false positive too, because that way you didn't have a true scary story. We put out to the audience just while you guys have been chatting. We had put a poll out there. Thank you. Some of you have shared your details as to, what maybe scary stories have you folks run into? And we've seen some folks put some correspondent in there. I think one of them here is, you'd never like to see is a finance employee was social engineered into changing the superintendent's direct deposit information. Yikes! Right before payday. But in the end of the day, but in the end here, it looks like at the end of the day, they were able to, looks like the employee didn't confirm with anyone. The scariest part, the employee still works for us in a highly confidential position. I won't say who's sharing this information, but yeah, that would be a scary story indeed. What was another one we got here? A very detailed and scary, accurate phishing email scam was sent to us, to our finance and fiscal department. It had a fake email thread. Everything was falsely generated, but looked very believable. And yes, that is, that's, these new ones that we just shared in the beginning of the webinar. And Fran and Sal and I talked about these yesterday, in preparation for today. They look extremely real. They even the phone calls coming in that the one story talks about. It is definitely scary. Here's a sad, scary one in here. after the Columbine shooting, our web server was hacked and displayed images of the shooters and the things they were doing. You know, that they wanted ransomware before they would stop putting the photos up in there. That, you know, that's just sad and sick. And then that's unfortunately what all of you at some point or another have had to address and deal with. Is the cybersecurity incidents can lead to a lot of challenges after the fact. Not only is it, you know, monetary because of the costs and the time, Sal, like you described, to put all that back together. You didn't have to necessarily bring in a third-party firm, but the amount of extra time you and your network administrator had to put in, Fran, in your case, just even tracking down a false positive, it's that additional time to go chase something down. Yes, vendors like Managed Methods and other vendors out there, we try to do our best we can to help you, but there is no silver bullet, if they say, or one all be all to kill that werewolf that is the ransomware, to kill that werewolf that is the cyber attackers. You know, we have to ever be vigilant, and stories like that you two have shared, stories like that, what our audience members are sharing, you know, that is reality that we have to deal with today. So trying to have more tools and resources in place. You know, we're honored to work with the two of you in your districts, as well as hundreds and hundreds of other districts around the United States each day, to help try and thwart these attacks and fend off the bad guys and bad actors and protect the schools. There's a lot of other great services and tools out there, but it also comes back to what you talked about earlier, Fran and Sal, resources. Having the support of your school district leadership, the taxpayer resources, if you're in private schools, the donors and other funding sources, but then also the awareness and then putting things in place to help share with that. Other, you know, as we wrap up here and we start to get to the top of the hour, is there any other final departing, you know, suggestions, thoughts, you know, hey, this was probably the best thing that we did after the fact, and now we have that in place? Fran?
I think one of the biggest things that I did, since I knew I didn't have the resources, is getting a third-party SOC out there. So I have someone monitoring my network 24/7. I didn't have that before. And then I layered that with Managed Methods that helps me out. I do a layer approach. I have obviously MFA. That was a definite. We did that about a year and a half ago. So I try to layer everything out. And I have another resource that I use that they do all my server backups at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm not doing it, but I have another group that's doing it for me. So I build a network security model together. So it's just not on me. I have other resources because I'm not the expert and I'll pull resources to do it for me.
Sal?
One thing that saves me the most is like a triple backup process, like having it in the cloud locally and then having it like say externally air gapped. That saved me a lot of time. Having some kind of plan in place in case you lose a server or in case you lose a virtual machine or a server, having that external backup air gap. And then testing as well. You know, you have to make sure that the backup works. I mean, you have to try to do it once a year testing, make sure those backups are working. And then, like Fran mentioned, MFA, I actually placed it on all our servers. We have MFA implemented. Make sure, you know, you have a certain password limit, like if they do 3 attempts, wait 15 minutes afterwards. But in addition, you know, having it on your web applications, MFA, like Microsoft or Google and the outside, that's important because they could actually hack brute force into a Google account that doesn't have MFA, or if you don't have no limits on it from before being locked, or alerts. Alerts are great. I mean, they just tell you, hey, there's a suspicious login, and then like Fran, he has 24/7 monitoring. That would be great on our network, but due to finance resources, I actually implemented some kind of a notification saying that if anybody logs in into any of our critical servers, we know right away. And then, having endpoints, the firewall, especially protecting from outside inside, making sure there's no open ports, back doors as well. And then lastly, is just having that contingency plan. If you have a contingency plan and making sure that you follow NIST template, or have somebody that's a cybersecurity expert at a college review it as well. I have a friend of mine that actually reviewed it, part of the over here Maricopa Community Colleges. He's an expert, and he has 40 years of experience, and he was on the federal government level. So, yeah.
So in similar, like what Fran, you talked about with the mentor program through ISAC, having other resources, and that's, I jump back in costume. It's Halloween. So, and that's certainly that would be probably the last thing I would leave everyone here with today, and reminding people, thank you first and foremost, Fran and Sal, for sharing your stories, and coming forth and talking about these types of things. This is what will help us continue to improve, raise awareness. With each passing day, we're now seeing more and more awareness at not only a federal level, state levels, but it takes these types of conversations and gatherings of, all the great folks that have joined us today in this webinar. And I'm sure that not only did we see 5 or 6 stories shared there in the webinar, yes, very important, folks. What is your costume tonight? I see the poll was just put up. So, it's making sure that we all talk about this and we share and we help each other out, because at the end of the day, I do believe in that, it takes a village. And one thing that's so good about the education community is the sharing. But we also know we've got an uphill battle. We don't have the resources that are maybe available in the commercial side. I know there's lots of efforts underway from great organizations out there like COSIN and other groups that are trying to, lobby Congress and speak to our legislators to try and get more resources. But at the end of the day, it still just takes awareness. Folks like you there, Sal, you, Fran, all the folks that have joined us today, the awareness and constantly just keep asking the questions. Like, what else can we do? What are you doing that's working for you? What did you do that didn't work? What was, those are always parts of the lesson. And I think, Sal, you just left with that is you evaluate after the fact what went well, what went wrong, what can we do to fix this in the future, and then, as you both have said, it's not if, it's when. So, well, Fran, Sal, thank you so much for sharing your spooky stories today, and thank you to all of our participants today for joining us, and sharing your sides of the stories and what's been happening out there. I'm seeing some pretty funny Halloween costumes out there. Mermaid Dad. I'd like to actually see that one. And what do we see? We got me and my coworkers are dressed up as bears right now. There we go. Okay. Dressed to match a custom pop figure. I see Waldo. I'm a cowboy, witch, the Matrix. There we go. Okay. I have to give it to whoever's got Mermaid Dad, though. I'd like to be able to see that one. That one might be quite comical. My 13-year-old daughter gave me this dad look this morning when she saw me getting this stuff out for the webinar. So anyways, thank you to everyone that's joined us today. First and foremost, Fran, Sal, thank you for taking time out of your day to share stories and participate. I see you both dressed up as IT professionals today, so thank you for doing that. Well, at least you got backgrounds. Only background I have is my pumpkin sitting here, but you can't see because it's blurred out. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. To our audience members, thank you as well for being a part of this and participating. And I wish you all a safe Halloween, and hopefully there will be no spooky stories as it comes to cybersecurity in your school districts in the near future. So, with that said, happy Halloween. Thank you, folks. Thank you for joining us. And Sal, Fran, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.